stitching from that exit point which your collar gun ended. Now when you're stitching, once you get to that choking you made, that flap edge, watch what will happen. Stitch once you get to that point. Don't forget to, you can still mark it on the fabric so you don't forget. So once you stitch and get to that point, you double stitch it this way. You raise your machine footer up. You can now cut off the excess flap right there, and then you're going to raise this like 2 inches or 1/2 inch up. This is serves you for the band extension, which makes it a corporate trouser. So once you raise it up, you still bend it down again and still try your best to continue from that exit point which the first one ended, and then make sure your trouser panels are arranged. Then bring your loops handy. Don't forget to put your loops here. In most cases, you might forget and you will lose the band and start afresh. So that jointed area must face up, so that by the time you fix your band, it will not face the band body and not facing downwards. Very important. So you place the loops at the point which you have marked, and then start stitching the band gradually. Start sewing the band gradually. Now make sure that the sides, you have also open press the side of the trouser, so that when you are stitching, it does not take the allowances to go one side. Open it up this way. Half goes this way, half goes at the back. So this is a must, you must do. So it's easy, it's make the work a little bit perfect. So arrange everything. So don't forget your loop. Bring your loops close. Fix your loops at interval where you have marked for your trouser. So here, I think my band is not long enough. I will join the band. So I will join the band. I will join this band. Okay, since it got to the point where I'm working from, so I will join the gumming. Let me go and gum it all through to get to this point. Then I will come and continue. So let me just sew first. So let me go and gum and come. So I have joined the band. Look at it. I did half inch lapping so that it will be enough to get to the end. With steel collar gun. Then making sure that I stitch all through to the very point. So at this point, make sure you stitch, and don't forget where your markings of your loop are placed, right? So this is the 3 inches there, from here 1.5, so 3 inches here. So you bring a loop as well and place. So here you continue your stitching. Continue your stitching. So when you get to this point, the next you do, look at what we have achieved so far. You see, this is how it must look. So you will now use iron to bend this properly, officially, to now lap and relax without much stress. You get. So I will also do the same band fixing on the other parts of the trouser as well, with the same method I used. So here I will also cross check this band if it's enough. This one is still enough, right? I think I will join here a little bit so that it gets. Let me join it before I start the joining fully. So let me join it. Just 1 inch is what I'm looking for. So you have joined it, so you continue as well from that same direction. Try your best. So you stitch. Don't forget also to put your loops. So put your loops this way. Put your loops this way. Put your loops this way. You take this one. So this is just one of the most tactical points or stages of our English trouser sewing. But believe me, you must do it. There's no other shortcut to it. You must do it. The side opening must be properly opened. Must be properly opened while you know undo the rest. So you iron down all through. You iron down all through. You iron down all through. So this is how it is. So make sure the directions I am giving might seem difficult, but then it's the best way to do it. So you continue. So make sure you avoid the zip stop or zip stopper. So once you sew to this point, just then you cut your threads, cut the excess flap this way. So make sure you remove. So you gently, you can now cut the exact length here. This one, we have exact length of the band, right? So now the next thing we do here is to stitch these loops half-inch down. Stitching these loops half-inch down is very essential. From the band joining half-inch down, all of them, your sewing will not exceed the loop dimension. Like what I mean is that you should not allow the rope, the thread, to be seen on the outer part of the body without the loop. It must lap exactly on the loops. So stitch all of them down by 0.5. This helps your loop to be enough to accommodate any size of your belt when you are wearing it. So half-inch down is what I will sew all of them. I will do that. I will come back and show you the results. Now we have finished in holding down the loops with half an inch all across. So next we will do now is to iron down the band. Remember that I told you the guys that it's after you have finished your loop fixing, then you now iron. So I prefer to iron it from the back this way. You know, it's preferable this way. So you just iron the band, iron it down this way, iron it down this way. So gently you iron it down, iron it down. So now look at it. You see how relaxed the band is looking already, right? So do the same thing on the other side as well. Hold the band down and you iron it down. Iron it down. I know most of you will have issues on band fixing, but if you follow my directions, you will come out victorious. So now we have gotten to this stage. So the next thing now, this area will still be iron, like will still be folded, so that you have a clearer clue on how this folding will work. So you iron this folding as well for a clearer understanding. So you can, fold this. You can fold this. So fold this. So this folding now is what you should have done, at the earlier stage. But then why I prefer doing it now is because it makes your band to be perfect. Look at how smooth the band is looking already. So do the same folding on the other component or the other part as well, just like this. Do the same folding just like this. So it goes all through this way. Do the same folding just like this. It goes all through this way as well. So after you have done the folding, so the next thing you are going to do is to have it, this is how it is. Look at it. Perfectly finished. Perfectly finished. Perfectly finished. Perfectly finished. This is it. You see? So when you're working with precision and patience, your jobs comes out in this form. So you must have your job come in this form before I can boldly call you my student. If you don't have your job in this form, I'm not your boss. So you must make sure your job comes out even better than mine, because mine that I'm teaching, I'm talking, and I'm working, I am explaining. So I am prone to make some mistakes, But if you're sewing for yourself, you will be focused and pay more attention to details. So this is how it is. So now the next you will do now is to start fixing your band. Now I will first of all, pipe a certain part of this flap before the band comes in. So this piping must be done at this edge, this front part, the one that has the extension, right? But before you pipe, you must have prepared the last loop, form it an angular form this way, in a V-shaped form this way, right? Now this will help you as a button holder, as against hook. So just stitch a little bit from here, stitch a little bit from here, just like half an inch stitching, and then cut off the threads like this, cut off your threads, and then the next stitching will use to attach it to the main trouser itself. So at this point, this this loop, this extension will face inwards. The angle will direct inwards this way. So by the time you finish sewing, it comes out and then faces the other way around. You get hair. So this is how it will be. So I will just tack it temporarily with my machine so that when I'm piping, it will pipe it at once. So here you hold it together. Make sure it's at the middle of the band, right? So stitch it down very well. So this is better off than using hook, because most times hooks tends to pull off or spoil, but this does not spoil at ease. Look at it. So this now will be where the button will enter. So what I will do next here is to now pipe it or tape it, however you want to call it. So by simply repeating the same process which we had done earlier, and when piping, open up all the whole allowance to be open. So here it comes up this way. Then I will cover it with my footer, with my this way, and then I will pipe all the way the whole of this flap. So you might decide to shorten the flap length if you want, but if you don't want, you can leave it that way and pipe everything together. So I pipe all the way down. So I make sure the piping is holding or grabbing firmly. So gently. So for here, I think I will shorten it a bit. Just to shorten that part a bit. Then I will tape here. Gently stitch it, sew it down. So gently sew it down. Gently sew it down. So this is how you tend to, create your English or make sew your English trousers. Make sure those edges are properly handled or finished. After you have done that, you can cut your threads, then cut the excess bias, cut it up here as well. And then this is what we achieved with that piping. The bottom will now be used to enter here. Then the next thing you are going to do now is to close this band from up and down. Remember that it's still open, so hold this firmly and then stitch from the point where the collar gum ended below here as well. Sew it from there, but when sewing, don't make it to run across to the other line. Give a little gap. Don't join the two lines together. The line not joining will help the band to turn easily, so that there will not have kind of tension, right? Cut your threads and then lock the up part of the band as well by simply stitching from here. So there's a trick I use. I use my machine footer as a gauge or guide, so that it will serve me for my band fixing as well. I give it a gap at that up part. I stitch with a little space there, but making sure that the lines of the band are corresponding. Then at this point, you now bring your band. So the band will lap like 1 inch or 2 inches inside, just like this. So I make sure that it gives me a stitching that will accommodate my band at once. Then when fixing your band, please make sure that you don't fix it to lap at the line here. The band should be like a little bit lower. Then push your band up this way in order to allow the band to use its hand and lap, so that there won't be much tension. If you drag it, it will squeeze your band. Don't drag the band when fixing. It will squeeze your band of the trouser. Give it freedom on its own, and then while you place the loop underneath this way, and make sure that the loop is not too hard here, like by dragging the main trouser up, just like this. So you must make sure that you achieve a perfect relaxation here. So just take your time to go through the video though. It's really gonna be a very long tutorial, but then that's the only way I know I can explain this in detail. So when you get to this point, what you do next is to make sure that you drag the loop down a bit in order to give it room for perfect finishing. I advise people to double thread their loop points. It helps to reinforce the loop to be strong, so that it won't pull off at will when at the slightest tension. So I push it up, carefully thread it, all through. Make sure everything is lapping as it should. Not lap as it should. Not lap as it should. So you lap it underneath. Try the loop as well to come down, just like that. Then do the same thing on the other band as well. Cut it to be straight. So now this is what we have. You can see how neat. Then if you fold it in, you see the loops are relaxed. There's no tension dragging the trouser panel up. You see, everything should be in this form. You see that? You see how the inside should be. Then do the same thing on the other side as well. Bring your band and you continue in that same procedure. So this is just one of the most difficult parts of your trouser stitching, the band fixing, because you need to be very much careful. So here it goes all the way to this point, this way. Make sure the band is not exact of the width of the other band. Double thread the loop points, make the work stronger. Then after you have done these loops or this band stage, you go and iron before you think about closing. So you fix your band, then drag it out a bit. Then remember there was a lining part we got when we were doing our accessories, right? So this is the stage we put it now. Remember I told you that I'll show you guys how to do this. So this lining measurement was cut at 6 inches, then folded. The length is around 12 or 13 inches length. Then fold one part this way. So you can decide to put hemming gum here if you want. Then the folded part will be 1 inch above the zip, 1 inch after the zip, this way, 1 inch above the zip. And then you place this on top like this. Then you stitch. Carefully stitch. Now once you pass this zip by like 1 inch or thereabout, or 1.5, then you give your own closure. Then you can cut the band excesses here. Then you can decide to make it square, slanted, however, anyhow you want to do it. It's only your choice. But make sure you give enough gap or enough space so that there will be enough room to accommodate your what's it called, your second buttons. So I just want to give it a small slash, not too much, and it must end at the exact point where your original band ended. Then you can decide to either come in or continue straight. So I think I will go in a bit, maybe like half an inch. I will just move in a bit by half an inch, continue in this form. So holding the flap together, making sure it's being held together. I'll move in a bit. Then you will trim off the excesses of this. You will trim it out, the excesses of the flap here. You will trim here off, trim it out. You will trim it out, trim very close. Then when coming to trim here, don't go straight this way. When you trim and come to the band, you stretch your hands this way. Very important, you must do this. Then look at what we have achieved. Let me turn it over. I will still show you the finishing. So this is the effects of what we are trying to achieve. So whereby this, we cover the whole flap value here, you see? To cover the whole flap here. You iron, then let me also turn this other one so that you also see the effect. So we use color gum in this part, so I will carefully turn this. Just put your hand in and carefully, gently tuck it out. I will do that and show you as well. After you have ironed the band, I have done that. Then you trim the excess points or parts of this waistline. Trim this excess point so that it will allow you to easily turn this. Trim the excess points just like this. Trim it out. Then watch what I did here. For the other end of the trouser, I've ironed this edge, this smooth edge, which I have done. And then I use iron, to properly iron this properly. This way. You see how I ironed it? After the trimming, the excesses here, I folded it inside, then folded again. So at this point, you can decide to use hemming gum to temporarily hold this, just to make your work look more beautiful. Then later on, this will be sewn from the outside here. Then you will lock this. I will show you as well. So now you have done this. Now the next you will do is to pipe the back waistline. You tape or you pipe the back waistline. The sense of this piping is to still make sure that you achieve neat finishing at the inside of your trouser. So I will pipe this and then I will show you the next thing to do. So now I have turn the band. Look at it. This is what it looks like. They have piped the back as well. This is what it looks like as well. So the next you will do now is to join the back band. Now in joining, you make sure that this band aligns. The both bands must tally. Please take your time to do that. Now remember that the measurement we had was our left was 1.5. So you are going to lock this band with that same value of 1.5. You must make sure it's corresponding, right? So it's advisable that you start from that choking which you made to start locking the band first. Don't leave the up part first. These two regions must correspond. Very, very important. These two regions must do what? Correspond. So just carefully take your time, and tally it. You might even use your pin to pin it together so that there will be no difference or whatsoever. And then you stitch from there. You stitch from there. So hold it this way. And then when closing, you reduce the value to 3/4 of an inch or even half an inch at the end of this part. So this area is meant to be sewn twice. This region is meant to be double threaded. So the double threading is also very important that you double thread. So this one does not need to tighten your stitch. Double thread because this has a lot of tension at the back. So double threading is sewing very close to the first line which you have made or sewn initially. So that sewing helps you to reinforce the strongness of the back band. And at this point is where you now lock it up straight. Your hands must be as straight as possible while locking your band at this stage. After which you go and open press and then start locking your band. So you open press all of this, open press this band. Look at the joining, look at how it's lapping, So you open press this way. I open press and come back to show the results. Now I have locked the band, just to top stitch at this edge, this tip. So locking the band all through this way. I know why I just have to do it so that it won't be bulky when watching, right? So I've locked the band all through. So the next thing you do after the band locking is to close the lap, knee, ankle, and that is the last part of your trouser. So now you just have to cut the threads. Then the band locking was stitched from, I first locked the center here so in order to make it to be firm. Then started from here. I buried the thread inside this joining all through. When I get to the next bit loop, I jump it and go inside and sew, just like that until I get to the very last edge here, right? After which I now arrange the flap under, then top stitch from here to lock this flap, this lining stuff. After I have done that stitching, then what I did now, I place the flap this way, start stitched 1 inch or half inch here, then locked it from there because my lining ended at the middle, so it was overlapped and then so on this point. So the inside is done. So the next I want to do now is to lock my lap, my knee, my ankle. After which I will now use this flap to close the trouser crotch region nicely. So what you will do now is to pin the crotch. First of all, pin the crotch. Make sure that the both crotch points are meeting each other at this point, and then you are going to apply your customer's measurement. Whatever be the ankle, you mark the ankle value at the ankle point. So the ankle I have is 14 and a half. So here I mark 725. Here I mark 725, 14 and a half, right there. And the knee I have is 18, 17 and a half or 18. So let's do the ankle, the knee, sorry. The knee 17 and a half, 875, 875. Then the lap is 27 and a half. So 27 and a half, you mark. Please make sure that you start applying the lap from the very edge of your lining, of your fabric here, at the very edge, right? Across, not on the center joining. So here, 27 and a half is what I have as my crotch. So just a little bit here. So just half an inch here. Then do the same thing on the other leg as well. Apply all the measurements and then you start to join. So after this now, what you do next now is to iron the band, you know. You go and iron the band to make sure that you put fabric on top, iron the band so that it will relax all tensions, both the front and back. Then you open press the inside leg, which I have already done. You open press the inside of your leg, of your trouser. So once you have open pressed the underneath leg, so the next thing you will do here is to close this flap region properly. Close this flap region properly by simply attaching this to one part. Please use one layer, don't use the both. So just make sure that it doesn't stretch. Give like 1 inch fold here, you know, to achieve a better result. You can reduce the length of this by maybe 1 inch or thereabout, depends on what you have already cut, you know. So just make sure it's not that exact length, you know. Then you pick up one layer, the front panel, sew it from the front, like from the back rather, just like this. Sew from the inside, sew from the inside, from here, stitch from here, and then you get to finish up properly. So this is just how it is. So this is how it is. So once you have sewn that part, you cut your threads, and this area is perfectly done. So the next you will do now is to lock the flap region, this area. You measure 1.25 or 1.3, but not up to 1.5, and sew that curve that always appear on your front trouser panel. So, and you must sew it in a way that it must slap firmly or perfectly. So gently arrange it this way, and then you stitch, so make sure it's relaxed. Please don't be in a haste, and then mark a chalk at where the zip ended so that you don't pass that spot or that point. So gently arrange nicely, and then you give there a perfect stitching. Arrange it nicely, then give there perfect stitching. So once you're approaching that area, you know, you have already removed your underneath flap. So you arrange. So 1 inch before that point, you start curving. So when you want to curve, you can now zip your trouser. And arrange the underneath flap. Make sure everything is properly arranged underneath, and then you give there a perfect curve. Please, it's very important. Perfect curve. So this is how it is. The last but not the least is to fold the leg. You know, you fold the leg of your trouser. So the leg folding is 1.5 inch to 2 inches. So you just fold and then iron your trouser. So that is the end of the tutorial. I do hope you enjoyed this video. So thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye for now.